So much for being here and for helping me make this vision of mine true. I will start now with my introduction. All right. On October 7th last year, I and many others awoke to the horrific headlines. They didn't feel quite real. Stories of mass kidnappings, of mass killings, of families driven from their homes, and soon after, of bombs falling all over Gaza. I remember sitting there in silence, knowing I was witnessing the horror start all over again. But eventually, I realized something, that my silence was also a decision, and I don't want to be silent. Assalamu alaikum and shalom lechulchem, and in English, we say welcome. My name is Inuka Tatton, and I'm honored to welcome you to this second International Peacebuilding Conference, targeting solution-driven strategies for peace. Let me start with a brief introduction. I'm an Australian student, currently completing both high school and university, and I've spent the last years of my life doing everything I can to help address the horrors of this conflict. I work with various organizations where I coordinate dialogue between Palestinians and Israelis, many of whom are still speaking out from unimaginable circumstances. I run the Coalition for Peace and Coexistence, an independent platform built to connect thinkers, activists, and ordinary people committed to peace building. And I've written hundreds of articles, and I'm now writing my second book, because I believe that our words still matter. Our ideas still matter. Dialogue still matters. But I don't do this because I have the credentials of a diplomat or of a politician, which I don't. I do it simply because I'm human, and because what's happening on both sides is inhumane. Because civilian casualties should not become a controversial topic. Because I believe deeply that we cannot outsource peace to institutions which have already failed us. Because when we see what's happening and we don't act on it, we become complicit. We become part of the silence that makes it possible. This is not a normal event, and this is not a normal moment. We are gathered in a year where the region has already suffered more violence than many of us imagined witnessing in our whole lifetimes. Entire communities have been devastated, entire families buried under rubble. Hostages still haven't come home. And hatred, a deep, burning generational hatred, is once again on the rise. And yet, this conference is not just a reaction to that pain, it's a response. It's a choice to move towards something better, however slowly, however imperfectly. At our first conference, we focused on the context. What's happening? Who's involved? And what are the dynamics? And today we go a step further. Today we ask what can be done, what works, and what changes things, even a small amount. We're not here to wait for the perfect solution, which will never come. We're here to explore practical ones, solutions that may start small, but that hold the potential to scale, to inspire people, and to save lives. Because the question is no longer, can we agree on everything? It's, can we build despite not agreeing on everything? Now, I want to be very clear. Peace building is not about being soft. It is not about avoiding truth, history, or pretending all perspectives are always equal. Peace building is about confrontation, but it's confrontation in the service of healing, not in the service of hate. It's people working through their trauma so their children don't inherit it. It's teachers rebuilding trust in communities where trust was long shattered. It's negotiators who sit through hours of shouting just to find one point of agreement. And it's not glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't always get applause. And most of the time, it doesn't get the results you can measure in a headline. But importantly, it works. Over time, quietly, consistently, that's why no conflict has ever lasted forever. And the people who do it, who choose every day, are the ones who I admire most in this world. People sometimes ask me why I care so much. I live in Australia. I am about as far removed from the Middle East as one can get. I've never heard a rocket overhead. I've never had to explain to a child why their school was flattened. I've never had to dig my own relatives out of rubble or watch them paraded through the streets on live stream. But here's what I have done. I've watched protests in my city spiral into violence, not over domestic issues, but over Gaza. I've watched entire groups split apart, not because they hate each other, but because they don't know how to talk about this. I've watched plenty of young people turn to apathy, not because they don't care, but because they're overwhelmed. This isn't only a regional conflict. It's a global crisis of empathy, of narrative, of memory, and of identity. And if we don't take responsibility now, if we just leave this to the politicians and the diplomats, we may find ourselves facing another generation of war with even fewer tools to stop it. That's why this conference matters. Because today, you're not just going to hear complaints, you're going to hear solutions, practical ones, real ones. Some big, some small, all of them aimed at shifting this conflict away from deadlock and towards dignity. Now, let me introduce the people who will be guiding this conversation. Individuals who all have real experience, real insight, and real courage. Firstly, we'll begin with a regional and structural overview, a summary of the dynamics still shaping the conflict behind the scenes. We'll hear from Jérôme Grimaud, a humanitarian mediator with 2 decades of frontline experience, who will help us understand how the conflict is managed far from the negotiating table. Lara Farag, who was scheduled to speak on key unresolved issues, is unfortunately unwell. However, her contribution will still be delivered on her behalf by Mohammed Daragmar, a colleague and close collaborator who we thank for stepping up in such short notice. We'll hear from Dr. Dan Tennant-Ralphs, a religious studies scholar whose work focuses on international justice, reconciliation, and the ethical dimensions of peace building. We'll hear from Mo Husseini, a Palestinian-American writer and commentator on the conflict. After this first section, we will transition into our core session. We have 3 proposals, each grounded in lived experience, and each in its own way attempting to answer the question of what can we actually do next. We'll hear from Dora Bender, an Israeli-American activist, Dr. David Villavegas, a Spanish scholar of Jewish religion and biblical texts, offering a faith-based and cultural perspective on how peace and identity can coexist. And then from Rebecca Sealfon, the founder of Unity is Strength, a not-for-profit fostering Israeli-Palestinian cooperation. And to close this evening, we'll be joined by 3 more voices who will reflect on what we've heard to push us further. We'll hear from Dora Bender once more, Dr. Dan Tennant-Ralphs again, and Remer Musmar, a Palestinian grassroots peace builder and civic advocate for dignity, justice, and shared vision. So now, let us begin. Let us open the door to disagreement, not to argue, but to build a better future. Let's share not just our pain, but our plans. Let's take one small step closer to the future we all say we want, a peaceful future. So thank you. We will begin tonight by grounding ourselves in the current landscape, because to talk about peace meaningfully, we must understand what's standing in its way. This first section explores where the region stands now, not just in the headline, but in the systems, decisions, and power dynamics. And now I hand it over to Jérôme, our first speaker. Jérôme, the stage is yours. The floor is yours. Thank you. I don't think you're unmuted yet, Mohammed. I'm sorry.
الصوت مسكر محمد.
Yes. Now it's okay, I think. Someone muted me. Someone trying to mute my voice. I'm not sure who is. Anyway, Yes, my name is Mohammed Daragmi. I am a journalist, Palestinian journalist based in Ramallah. I used to work in both West Bank and Gaza, but since the war, we media community were banned from entering Gaza. This is the only war in the history that did not witness foreign coverage, media coverage, simply because no single journalist has entered Gaza since October 7th. Let me start from where my colleague ended. What is the way out? I live in Ramallah, in West Bank. The war is raging in Gaza, claiming lives of dozens of thousands of people, starving people to death, isolating, displacing. All the war tools are being practiced in this tiny area that doesn't exceed in size a small city in Europe. It is 365 square kilometers, where 2.3 million Palestinians are squeezed. It is considered to be the most densely populated area on Earth. While the war is raging in Gaza, West Bank is seeing another war. It is annexing West Bank, annexing the Palestinian territories, the rural territories, and squeezing Palestinians in their community. And Ramallah has become a canton during the war. I personally live 1 hour drive from my homeland to Bas, but I cannot go simply because of the Israeli checkpoints. There are checkpoints everywhere that hinder the movement of Palestinians and squeezing people into cantons. There are, according to Israeli Human Rights Organization, 850 roadblock, some of them iron gates, some of them manned checkpoints, some of them just roadblock, were erected during the war in West Bank. Every single village is closed now by an iron gate. Every single city with checkpoints. No place is giving us free access. No. That harshly affected the economy and the social life in West Bank. I personally, I've seen my mother in Tobas only 3 times during the last 2 years, simply because she always begged me not to come because I'll lose half of the day on checkpoints, and it is risky because settlers attacking Palestinians on road. Yesterday, the Israeli government endorsed the building of 22 new settlements in West Bank. And I've checked as a journalist with my Israeli journalists, my colleagues in Israel, and they told me basically that Netanyahu, for allowing some food aid to enter Gaza, he was squeezed by the far-right partners, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, to in return for that, to give them a presence in the Palestinian land. So he gave them 22 new settlements. That add to more than 280 settlements in West Bank. Plus, during the war, settlers have built 66 new outposts, plus 150 animal farms, where they control the rural area. Now, what's the way out? West Bank is very small. West Bank is less than 6,000 square kilometers. In this less than 6,000 square kilometer, the size of city in Europe, it's not a country, it's a city around West Bank. In size, I mean, we have 3.5 million Palestinians, including East Jerusalem, plus 750,000 Jewish settlers. So the area is overcrowded, and those 750 Jewish settlers are enjoying the resources, the natural resources, the water, the land. Palestinians have no access to their land for agriculture or having industrial zones or whatsoever, nothing. So people are squeezed just in these tiny communities in Ramallah and Nablus, Hebron, everywhere. What's the end game here? A solution. We are seeking solutions. What kind of solutions? There are only one solution. It is Palestinian independent state living side by side with Israel in peace and security. But building settlements on daily basis on West Bank leave no space for the Palestinian statehood. No place, no space, no place. The Israelis have been, during the peace process that started in Oslo in 1993, the successive Israeli government, left and right and center, kept building settlements. That means that they were not intended really to have a solution, because you cannot negotiate the cake and eating it at the same time. So basically, the Israelis are going right in terms of politics, and the majority believe this is the land of Israel. Okay, and they are building. They believe that they can build any place in the middle of Hebron, in the middle of Nablus, and everywhere they are building settlements. Every city now is ringed with settlements. You go to Hebron, settlements inside and settlement outside. Bethlehem, it is ringed by settlers, by settlements. Nablus, Salfit, Jericho, everywhere. So where to build the Palestinian state? There is no place. Then what's the alternative? What kind of solution do I need? Yani, shall I accept as Palestinian the facts, these settlements as normal? Where to live for my future generation? Where can I build housing for the new generation? Where can I build economy? There is no place. It is gone. Less than 6,000 square meters. Most of 60% of them under the Israeli control. They are building settlements. So then I cannot have a state in these cantons, and it is not a viable state. No place to build any project for this statehood. So what's the alternative? The alternative is one state reality. The Israelis are building one state reality with two systems, one for Jews, one for Palestinians. It's an apartheid. It is as simple as that. We are living in an apartheid system. There are roads for settlers and tiny roads, old roads for Palestinians. Okay, settlers can build anywhere in West Bank, on the top hills. They take land, they build villas, they build animal farm, and with the full support of the government. While Palestinians, even if they build a small shack for some villager, these shacks get demolished the day after. Settlers are, this morning, an Israeli journalist visited me, and she was showing me footage from southern Hebron, Masafir Yattab, people being attacked by settlers, and boys were arguing with the Palestinians, telling them, this is our land, you have not the right to be here. So is that a recipe for peace? Definitely no. When you deprive Palestinians from their land, from their resources, water, land, everything, roads, discriminate against them, it is a recipe for war, for violence. Palestinians naturally react, sometimes in a very harsh way, sometimes in a very, very soft way, but any people in the world under occupation would react. That's the fact. So there are no solutions, either one state reality with apartheid system or two-state solution. There is no other solution. I studied political science. What kind of solution should be? Even some people come up with ideas like confederal relationship, but there is no land for the Palestinians to have their own state. Give them their state first, their land, their resources, and then after that, they can build a kind of confederal relationship or federal relationship. Some would say, why you are upset with settlers who are coming to okay, but there is no place for settlement. The Holy Land, 27,000 square kilometer. Israel in 1948 built their state on 78% of this land. 22 left for Palestinians. And 1967, they came over and occupied the 22. Now the Palestinians are humble with their demands. They want a statehood on this 22% of the historical land, the Holy Land. But the Israelis say, no, this is the land of Israel, and you have no right to stay here. Look at Smotrich. He says the Palestinians have only one option, either to stay in their homes and work in Israel. Anyone who would stand against that should be killed or expelled. This is the reality that we live under. So it is harsh reality. I wish I could have brought any good news from the Holy Land, but no, the reality is Israel is going far right. Look at the latest article of Thomas Friedman. He wrote it from Israel. He himself is a Jew, and he said basically Netanyahu has changed the country from a liberal democracy into an autocracy full by settlers and right wings and religious Zionists. So this is the reality. What kind of solution we are seeking? We Palestinians are, as far as I know, as a journalist who has been covering this story for more than 3 decades, the Palestinians are willing to have a statehood on 22% of the historical Palestine, on the Holy Land, West Bank and Gaza Strip. And this land should be empty of settlers because there is no space. If it was America, if it was Australia, if it was Canada that large, they are welcome to come. But there is no place for us. There is no place for us to build housing for the new generation or to build economy. So the land is small, and putting more settlers is a recipe for the next episode of confrontation, violent confrontation, next episode of explosion. So what I recommend, any policy recommendation can be emerged here, is only the international community comes and separates the land, says this is the state, the borders of Palestine. Palestinians are accepting to have demilitarized statehood, and this is the state of Israel, and that's it. If it is left to the Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate peace treaty, there is no base for that, because Israel has become dominated by the right-wingers who believe that this is given to the Jewish people from God, and the Palestinians have to stay or in their home quiet and work, and Israel serve the Israeli people according to their messianic beliefs, and or leave the country. Where to leave? Where to leave? To Canada, to Australia, to Europe, where to live. So this is the reality, and I hope that the world wake up and bring about a solution. Without international intervention, there will be no solution. Without pressure and sanction on Britain, I heard in the news that they plan to sanction some Israeli ministers. Without this kind of international pressure, there will be no solution, and we are going to move from circle to a circle of bloody confrontation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mohammed. It's very sad that there's no good news as such, and it just shows the seriousness and devastation that this conflict brings. So thank you for that. We'll now move on to Dr. Dan Tennant-Ralphs, who will be talking about the role of international actors. So if you could do that, that'd be awesome. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Inuka. And it's an amazing initiative you've put together here, and it really resonates what Jerome and Mohammed said, and it's a pleasure to join you. And even though my ego likes the sound of it, I should say I'm not a doctor, but maybe one day that will occur. So speaking at least from what's missing in, I would say, in Spain, because that's obviously where I've got my heart closest to the ground. What's happening, I would say, is what's missing is more unified sympathy and less selective humanism. And I think, at least from what I see here, a lot of people have got their hearts in the right place because they rightfully care about the suffering of the people in Gaza. But when people are asked about feeling sympathy, for example, for Israeli hostages, that sympathy seems to go away. And there's a strange paradox of palpable violence that can sometimes be felt in certain protests that is a real contradiction because if I'm protesting against a war and against suffering and against violence, it kind of goes against logic to be doing it from a place of anger. And again, the anger maybe is justified, but it's like, well, if we're trying to come with constructive, pacific solutions, then to what degree is it productive for me to be getting angry and to be promoting a very one-sided dialogue? And I'm going to steal something from David. I hope he'll be okay with it. In a full credit to him, but I know there was a recent summit here in Spain, and again, like what was missing at that summit, which was organized with the Arab League and other European nations, and Spain was there was no participation from the Israeli side, and it's like maybe that's a pipe dream at the moment, given as Mohammed was saying, the extremism in the Israeli government is quite, for me, it's very hard to understand, even trying to look at it through the lens of compassion. But that's where we're at. And, having these sort of one-sided conferences, well, it's missing the participation of all the players, all the actors. And what else I would say is missing, for example, is I would say some degree of unity and more sympathy, speaking from the perspective of the Jewish communities. I see a lot of inward squabbles going from the Reform community right through to the conservative communities here. And I would even say something else that's missing generally in Spain is awareness that Jews and Israel are more than just Netanyahu, because in Spain the Jewish community is very small. So it's kind of like even this week, I maybe erroneously chose to reveal that I was Jewish to people that I'd never met before, and the first question I was asked was about my opinion on what's going on in the Middle East, and it's interesting because in other settings, I'm not sure how appropriate it would be to, for example, to put a Russian person on the spot about what Putin's doing. Again, I think there's sometimes what's missing is a lack of social tact, I would say, and knowing that there's a time and a place to raise certain topics. And also, I believe there can be a lack of willingness to compromise. I had a cordial but intense debate with someone from Morocco the other day, and even though we were both on the same page about hating violence and wanting to bring an end to the suffering for everyone, this person didn't seem to even be willing to acknowledge the right of Israel to exist. And I was saying, if we're gonna go down that route of not even being willing to compromise, then I think we're in trouble. And something else that I think at the ground level that is missing that I think could help to raise awareness about those actually making an effort to encourage reconciliation could be screening films. And I'm not necessarily talking about No Other Land because it's a fantastic documentary, but not everyone on the Israel side would be such a fan of that film. But I'm talking about something like Dancing in Jaffa, which I think is a genuine beacon of reconciliation because you see a Palestinian famous ballroom dancer, Pierre Dulin, who he teaches teenagers, Jews, Muslims, Israelis, Palestinians to dance together. And you can imagine being teenagers, how much they hate each other and all the suspicion. But I think that could help. Like if, for example, but at the same time, they've got a glimpse of open-mindedness. Maybe watching that kind of content could help to raise more international pressure, but from a constructive, more nuanced perspective, as opposed to being very overly one-sided. And I think also what's missing, at least this is just my perspective, but when I've seen, I think a lack of compassion and what's the word I'm looking for? Like just cordial, well, yeah, polite behavior. For example, like if I'm in a left-wing Jewish group and I'm using offensive sort of childish terms to describe people that are on the right or vice versa, I'm not really doing anything to help the people suffering in Gaza by calling someone who's right-wing a fascist or calling someone who's left-wing a communist, as opposed to, again, be looking for common ground. And I'm not delusional. I don't expect everyone to agree. But I think just maybe having that space to pause and respond as opposed to react. And that's something I need to remind myself of as well, because I wouldn't claim to be the best at hearing other people's opinions, but if I can have a polite but intense debate with someone that doesn't acknowledge Israel's right to exist, and that gives me hope, because that's a challenge for me. So anyway, I think I was only supposed to do 5 minutes, right? I've been trying to keep an eye on my clock there, but I'll leave it there, and salam shalom from Spain.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's good again to hear hope and the different perspectives. I think, as I said previously, hope is in quite dire need at the moment across the region, but across the world as well. So it's good to hear that some people still do have hope. Um, we're going to go and move on to Mo Husseini now, and then after that, we'll be having a brief 5-minute break before we get into the next section. So Mo, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Inuka. I hope you guys can hear me. I wanted to start by saying a few things. First of all, I don't represent anyone. I'm speaking only in a personal capacity. I also want to be clear and say that I do not believe that externally imposed solutions are ever acceptable. To me, only Palestinians and Israelis in the region should be designing the resolution between them. And finally, and most critically, I want to say that I believe all of these are interesting conversations that we're having right now and critical conversations. But I do believe that it is critical that we have a ceasefire as quickly as possible and that we get aid into Gaza before even more people die in senseless and horrible ways. With that, I'll get to kind of the meat of the question. Inuka asked me to speak about specifically the role of external mediators in the context of a resolution. Václav Havel once said that hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. And I find myself coming back to that quote often because these days optimism feels like a luxury. When you have the visceral reality of the cycles of violence that we are engaged in every day. Optimism asks you to believe that it's all going to be okay. Havel asks you to keep showing up, keep bearing witness, even when it's not okay, year after year. So the question of how mediation can be helpful, to me, the answer isn't photo ops or superficial band-aids. It's about helping to carve out space through principled pressure, through empathy, and through the discomfort of genuine growth. We've got to create space for people in this conflict to imagine a future that makes sense for them in their own terms, even if arduous. even if it requires them confronting the pain, even if it takes longer than we in our impatience want. So I always try to stay grounded in a disciplined hope, and in a belief that humane striving still and always matters. When most people imagine peace talks or mediation, they imagine a long table with two sides and people discussing things, and everything is civilized and rational and symmetrical. But I think it's really critically important to admit that the table has never been balanced. It's not a meeting of equals most of the time. And for too long, that imbalance goes unspoken. You've got on the one side a Palestinian people that is stateless, is occupied, its territory is fragmented more and more every day by siege, blockade, surveillance, military control, and the ever-growing settlement problem that makes everything that much harder. And on the other side, you've got one of the world's most advanced militaries, backed by major alliances and nuclear weapons and billions in aid, and a sophisticated global diplomatic apparatus. Right? This isn't a negotiation between equals, and it's often a performance that's the international community engages in my opinion, to manage perception and maintain a status quo, and not resolve the root issues. And many mediators, consciously or not, play their part in that. It's easy to call for restraint while bombs are flattening refugee camps and while illegal settlements continue to expand. Talking about both sides compromising as if both have the same tools or ability to compromise is delusional. So having said all that, let me be unequivocally clear. I am not against Israel's right to exist in security any more than I am against the right of any nation to exist. Right? I don't deny a Jewish connection to the land. I don't oppose Israelis' right to self-determination and liberty free from fear. What I do oppose is the idea that any nation's safety or existence should come at the existential expense of another people. To say that Israel has a right to exist to the exclusion of a Palestinian right to exist, to the exclusion of a Palestinian right to self-determination. And to me, what needs to be mediated beneath all these euphemisms, it's not a border dispute. It's whether Palestinians get to be treated as fully human, whether they have rights and dignities, the same rights and dignities that Israelis claim for themselves. You cannot mediate humanity. I can't tell you that you are 50% human, or you get 50% of human rights. If you are human, you have human rights, and those rights should be respected for everybody. That's true for Israelis, that's true for Palestinians, it's true for Christians, it's true for Muslims, and it's certainly true for Jews. About 15 years ago, my wife had a really hard day, and our son, who's 17, was 2. He was exhausted, very cranky, and he wanted ice cream for dinner. Not after dinner, but for dinner. She said no, and he had a complete meltdown, and he kept crying. My wife finally gave in, says, "Hey, here's some ice cream. Have some ice cream for dinner," to end the tantrum. And he kept crying. And she knelt down and asked, why are you still crying? Why are you still crying? And his answer is, I don't know. And I think that in many ways, this is where the political and emotional core of this conflict has gotten when I talk to some of the people in this conversation. The original fight, the conflict over safety, justice, land, trauma is still there, but it's buried under so much performance and pain and identities that have been shaped by mutual demonization. The fight, to me, has almost become the habit. It's that they're not crying over ice cream. They're crying because crying is the ritual. Because feeling aggrieved has become a terrifying a shield from the terrifying vulnerability of imagining something else. So to me, mediators, external mediators, have a real job to do. And that's not to referee tantrums, and it's not to assign blame. It's to kneel and look the conflict in the eye and ask what's really underneath there. What do you fundamentally need? Real mediators don't police the tone or impose bandages or solutions. They help recenter purpose. They excavate legitimate human needs from under rubble and rhetoric and help sides remember that sometimes it's the thing behind the thing. It's not the slogan, it's not the cycle of outrage, but the real universal goals that, in my opinion, both sides have a right to: freedom, dignity, justice, and peace. This, to me, isn't geopolitics or disputed land. It's deeply rooted identity. It's about ego. It's about existential fear. And frankly, as someone who is sitting in America, kind of engaging with this, it seems like neither side is eager for prolonged self-reflection. To me, I see a lot of people use extremists as scapegoats, right? You'll see moderate Israelis go, "Oh yeah, well, I don't support Netanyahu or Ben Gvir or these guys," And you'll see pro-Palestinian folks say, like, "Oh, well, I don't support Hamas or rockets or these guys." That's fine. That's great. Like, I want people to not support those things. But too often, to me, that's where it ends. And I think it needs to go deeper, and it needs to, people need to understand that criticizing the fringe doesn't excuse the failings of the mainstream. I think there are very real mainstream problems. Certainly everybody talks about the problems on the Palestinian side and all of that. There are some very real problems built into the core of Israeli society right now, as a function of nearly 3 decades of a rightward shift that is connected to control of the media in Israel in a lot of ways, right? Like the biggest papers are all right-wing and pushing a right-wing story over and over again and radicalizing that population as well. And I just want to be clear that absolutely Palestinians have middle-of-the-road problems, but those societal problems clearly exist in Israeli society, and particularly here in the United States. That stuff we pretend it doesn't exist, right? Like that the Israelis on one side are just these lovers of democracy and freedom, and the Arabs have all these internal problems, which is categorically not true. To me, mediation isn't about just facilitating dialogue. It's making both of these sides cultivate the courage to tell hard truths to their own side. The international community, to me, cannot be neutral observers, and they aren't. They arm, they fund, they prop up injustice, and they pretend to be surprised when it all explodes. Ethical mediation demands reckoning with that first, and understanding that you cannot continue to sustain the violence and then pretend to condemn the violence. You can't guide others to peace while you're fanning the flames of conflict yourself. I don't want mediators to pick sides. I don't want them to champion nationalism. I don't want them to champion Palestinian nationalism any more than I want them to champion Israeli nationalism. I want them to advocate for people, for regular, everyday Palestinians, for regular, everyday Israelis, for Arabs, for Jews, for Muslims, for Christians, for humans, because those are the people that suffer. Under every missile, under every checkpoint, under every hostage taken, under every child put into administrative detention, our future dims with every one of those actions. Those people need to be centered. Those are the people who pay for the statements and the silence and the diplomacy by press release. Those are the lives that peace work should center. Mediators need to work in a way that protects those lives, that pushes back with clarity against systems that treat people as pawns, as some kind of calculus. Like, oh, well, we're going to, you took 1, we have to take 100. You took 20, we're going to take 1,000. Even when it's inconvenient or costly, we've got to name injustice clearly, whoever commits it, whether that's Palestinians, whether that's Israelis. We've got to do the slow, grueling work of building trust. And we've got to do this because this conflict will not be solved by killing more people. It's not going to be solved by outlasting the other side or waiting for God to pick a winner. To me, there are only three exits. Israel kills every single Palestinian. Palestinians kill every single Israeli. Or somehow we finally get the message that nobody is leaving, that we have to share the land and we have to live together. And I would tell you that unless you are, excuse my language, a fucking psychopath, there is only one option of those three that is acceptable. Nobody should be killing anybody. I'm not asking mediators to take a side. I'm asking them to take responsibility, to show up for people, not flags, not slogans, not tribes, to do what Havel asks us to do. Keep showing up, keep pushing for what makes human sense, even if it takes time, even if people aren't ready to have those conversations, because the only peace striving for is one where both people truly live. Not just survive, not just exist, but live in dignity, in safety, and in peace. So that's all I have to say, and happy to take any questions or anything like that.
Thank you very much, Mo, for that. Yeah, it's really inspirational what you say, and I think it's very important that while there are, as you said, three solutions, I think almost everybody should and hopefully does accept that there's one real solution where we do live in peace, whichever way that takes. So we're gonna have a brief 5 minute maximum intermission where we'll just sort out a few technical issues, but then we will be back and we'll go on with Dora's piece on the first one of our solutions for tonight. So thank you very much. I'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll be coming back in about 1 to 2 more minutes, just letting everybody know. All right, we'll start back up, everybody. Awesome. So, despite some technical difficulties, we will still be going ahead with everything. So, Dora will be presenting her solution now. So, thank you very much. And additionally, before we start, I am aware this is running a bit later, but so feel free to leave when we get to the latter end of the Q&A, which will be for the audience questions, if that helps anybody. So, thank you all very much. Dora, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Inka. And I see Eunice has joined, and Eunice is my partner, my Palestinian. Hello. And we're going to present to you today political solution and the path for federalism. We both are working on organization that's going to promote democracy and federalism. I am in the Israeli side, and my colleague Eunice on the Palestinian side. So thank you. All right, let me share the screen. Okay, can you see it? Is it good? Okay. See, it didn't. Okay. So today we're gonna discuss about political solutions, and I know this is something that most people recently are avoiding because of the situation. Both sides are very sensitive to speak about it, also because of October 7th, what's happening in Gaza. Some see it as genocide, the other see it as just defense. So it's been very sensitive, but we discovered that actually this is the right time, to discuss about it and not to keep pushing it and saying, oh, not now, we have to do reconciliation first, we have to do a ceasefire. We really think that it can actually improve our opportunities, and bringing also discussion can bring hope for people, because people are desperate and they said, oh, what can we do? And Mo, like you said, like I really like what you said is, or we gonna kill you, or you're gonna guys kill us, or we're gonna sit and discuss. So this is what we want to do. And also we want to bring it into an international standing. The issues that we have now, that it seemed like the entire world want to decide for us. And I agree on that. And I do believe that to create a solution, we need to discuss between us. And how do we do it? So we need to start actually doing it. Okay. So I want to present that before we both Eunice and I promoting federalism. But before I'm diving into federalism, most people don't know what is federalism. It's kind of like, what is this animal? What are we talking about? So I have a presentation about political solution. It's really short. It's sponsored by Forum 1325 for Political Agreement. It's a women forum that I was, it was my own initiative. And today another woman named Yasmin Guerra is leading it. And the forum actually discuss about all the political solution and also engage women to take participation. So let's discuss. Okay, so the first solution that most of us know are two-state solution. I'm not going to go more into it. This is our path for so many years. We both sides discussing about the two-state solution, never implemented. So whenever the same, we don't see it as a failure because it was never tried to be implemented. But as we know today, because of the different situation in the West Bank, this solution become harder and harder. Also because of the settlement, the more we push for two-state solution, the more settlement have been built. Also realizing that both sides see the entire land as their home. and this is our home. We want to dwell in the entire land. So we feel that both see the entire land as from the river to the sea as the place that they want to be or feels home. Now we have major issue today or major challenges with the two-state solution is the expansion of settlement. The more times go, it seems that it's more impossible. I believe there is like about 1 million Jewish people that live today in settlement in the West Bank, and also the division between the status of Jerusalem and the refugee. Moving forward, thinking, okay, so this two-state solution never was implemented. Maybe it will, maybe not. But from organic perspective, what we discover that there is more and more new solutions that are popping, and people are moving toward a confederation because the need for both people to dwell on the entire region, in the entire land. So people thought, okay, how are we going to work it out? Let's look what other conflict happened in the world and how they were solved. And many people see in the in the European Union as a good model for us, where two states can have their own independence on many aspects, but we can have something shared. Okay, it might be a shared government, it might be just a cooperation. So more and more solutions are being written toward that path, and mainly because it addresses the ability of freedom of movement. So that is a major key for that particular solution. Moving forward, deeper than confederation, we're moving into a federation. About 25 countries in the world today present a true federation and a democratic federation. We deem them, we have the US, Switzerland, Belgium, Germany. Basically, a federation gives us the ability to keep our own identity in our own canton or our own specific area. So we can divide the entire land into small canton, and that will have their own autonomy. And then we'll have the federal government. Here I brought a map of Emmanuel Shahaf. We have Tass here that is his partner, and that actually present how something like that could look like. Okay, and then we move into a one state. One state is something that I think most people would love to see, but the biggest challenge with the one state is the loss of the identity. Us as Jewish, we see the need of keeping our Jewish identity, and we want a Jewish state. Not all of us, but a big majority of us. This is something that is very important. As the same for our colleague, the Palestinian, this is something that's very important to them, their self-determination. So this is some of the major thing within the one state, although could be like utopia if we would ever reach that. So moving forward, what truly happening right now from organic perspective, we are moving into a hybrid solutions. Okay, so something in between confederation and federation characteristic. And the advantage that it gives us, it's a lot of flexibility. So if we truly want to make it happen, we can open a deeper discussion between us, not other foreign countries discussing about it. We want to discuss it. We want to see what worked for us. It is a gradual and complex implementation, but it's something that could be very sustainable. And I'm going to move the floor now to Eunice. Eunice, go ahead, please. Okay.
Thank you, Dora. And thank you, Inuka, for the invitation, for this opportunity. And I have a feeling that I know some of the wonderful people right here. Taysir, so good to see you. Mo, we had an amazing talk on the podcast a few months back. Rameh, my friend, so good to see you here as well. And Raquel. So and Rebecca. So what we do at the Palestinian DFH is slightly different. But first, I will talk about the OG Federal Forum, where this idea came from. So what we did is we gathered the plan writers, people who are passionate in Israel and Palestine about federal solution or an alternative successful solution. And we gathered them instead of competing with each other, they would start working with each other. So we've had meetings and events, and we try to evolve the cooperation from, like I said, competition into working together for a confederation or a federation in the future. So these are some of the main plans from our Federal Forum members who have been advocating for it for many years. And now there's more of a chance for them, an opportunity to be out there and engage with like-minded people from all around the world. Yeah, Dora, would you like me to talk more about the Federal Forum or jump into the Palestinian DFH?
I think, yeah, it's up to you. I think we don't have a lot of time, so you can just dive into what we do. I think it's really important. And maybe if Nimat here too, she can say one or a few words about joining for the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like she wasn't able to join us yet.
Okay.
I will very quickly just talk about the Palestinian Democracy and Federalism Hub. The idea is that we're slightly different from the Israeli counterpart, in which we see that a future federation or confederation is the best guarantee for nation building efforts and for sustainable peace. From many experiments all around the world, successful experiments, federation has been the basis for sustainable peace for many countries. Not least, even I think Inuka, and correct me, I think Australia is also a federation, right? Some sort of.
Yeah.
You have some nearly impossible examples, such as Malaysia, and you have UAE, and you have Kurdistan that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for federation. So there's a lot of potential, but it all depends on us, on the movement, on the and mobilization. And in order for us to do that, like I said, federation is not an alternative for a two-state, but federation is a guarantee for a Palestinian state, for a rising Palestinian state to flourish side by side with Israel. But instead of complete separation, which no Palestinian wants, no Palestinian on the street would say to you that I want my state and then I want to be completely separate from the rest of the historical land, and many of whom call it historical Palestine. So that would be a huge issue for majority of us. So we would like a guarantee for that setup within a federal framework, ideally. So what we do at the DFH Palestine is we work alongside our European partners from Union of European Federalists and others as well. We have tens of thousands of members. And they also see the potential in a federation between Israel and Palestine. And what we do, what we're trying to do is launch youth trainings and youth programs, training programs, to raise awareness for what a federation is or what a confederation is or any different setup, and engage the youth in Palestine, especially, and later on at a later stage with their Israeli counterparts, Israeli rising federalists, to get them more familiarized with what we do and why is federalism not just a possible solution, but it's also a movement that they can mobilize around and actually provide an alternative to, for example, other ideologies and other movements, such as, could say, Islamism or socialism or communism or whatever. Whereas actually federalism is a movement that people can mobilize around. So yeah, that's in short, that's what we're doing in DFH right now. And we have launched a program that we call Joining for the Future for young rising federalists. We're not pretending that these people are actually federalists from the get-go, but they are supposed to meet with other federalists from around the world and build up that passion for the movement. So when they become the future leaders, they can make good decisions. And I invite you to support the program. We can share some links after the event. And yeah, thank you. That's what I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dora and Eunice, for your pieces. I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I think for everybody who's watching this, is that in the peacebuilding community, you're not alone. It's not this small, hidden away community, and it's a growing movement, and it has power. And I think that's the most important one, the most important takeaways. Amazing. So now we're going to go to our second solution, which will be presented by David. So if that's all good, then we'll move on to that one. So thank you very much for that, and let's move on.
Perfect. Thank you, Inuka, for this initiative, and thank you for all the people who participate. It's a pleasure to hear all of you. I'm from Spain. I think also maybe you can tell from my accent. And just for before I start with my talk, I would like to share with you like a quick introduction of myself, because I think it's important too. I'm not like our French colleague. I'm not connected personally with any side. I'm not Israeli nor Palestinian nor Jew. I'm Christian. I'm from Spain. And I'm connected with, or I'm working in the doing research in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because 8 years ago, when I was doing my PhD, I was in Jerusalem in the Hebrew University, and I was studying also in the Colby League. The reality of the conflict, the routine, all the things that were happening that impact me a lot, and that's why I wanted to that time, taking into account that I was studying a PhD in Jewish religion, in biblical studies, I wanted to some kind of reoriented my career and to focus on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and this is what I've been doing the last 8 years. Although we are talking about solutions, and I entirely agree with the colleagues that say that it's about Israelis and Palestinians that have to decide their future. I think I'm going to give like a talk about what we can do to not finishing in this catastrophes that the other colleague says that, or either the Palestinians kill the Israelis or the Israelis kill the Palestinians. Right now, we are seeing catastrophe in Gaza. We are witnessing this killing of the civilians, also the hostages that Hamas have. And to me, I'm optimistic, but I'm also quite realistic and somehow pessimistic right now, because what we are seeing. We are talking about solutions, about one-state solution, two-state solution, federation. I'm also more familiar with the confederation because I have a lot of contact with Yossi Berlin, with the Israeli foreign minister. It was in religious affairs, one of the architects of the Oslo process. But I think that apart from thinking in all these solutions, possible solutions, one state, two state, federation, confederation, now our action has to be pointed in stopping what is happening right now, how we can move from this situation to the one that can create that solution can happen. First, the Palestinian colleague was speaking about all this international pressure. I'm quite, as Dan also said, because what happened here in Spain, I'm quite pessimistic about the effects of the pressure that it's happening right now, because I think it's not pressure, it's more some comments, decisions that they don't really have an impact in the Israeli government. For example, if we remember 17 years ago and 11 years ago, when also the European Union stopped some countries, like for example mine, like Spain, stopped some business with Israel. This didn't change their reality. This didn't change the Israeli politics. It was, what they did was being more independent in some terms of, weapons, energy, whatever, and they developed more their power. The only international pressure that really affects her somehow was when Israel removed their troops in Lebanon in the 80s, but this was because they already kicked out the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So and if we have a look about the peace process, the Oslo process, when it began, it was because the Israelis and Palestinians, they wanted to do it, no? Apart from the consequences that in the 80s, like although that was happening about the US, Soviet Union that disappeared and whatever. So to me right now, I think that unless we put an international pressure, but to both sides, also to Hamas and to Israel, this is not going to happen. And this is something that I'm going to comment a couple of minutes, because now when we see that many international leaders that they are putting pressure on Israel, on the Israeli government, but they forget sometimes Hamas, no? And I think that all the pressure has to be done in both sides, not only in the Israeli government, but also in Hamas, because the Israeli government and Hamas, they need each other. For me, both they are radicals, and they need each other. Hamas, what is it going to do with Hamas if they don't have violence, if they don't have the hostages? And what are they going to do, all these far-right politicians in Israel, if they don't have these Palestinian enemies? So the international community has to put pressure in both sides to stop all these casualties, to stop the death in Gaza, and then that the hostages can be released. And as what can we do as researchers, humanitarian employees, and students, whatever? We need to try to contribute in this pressure. And what I'm a little bit like sad in, not in Israel and Palestine, but countries like mine, like in Spain, is like sometimes people, like even like the ones they call themselves pro-Israelis and pro-Palestinians, they are even more radicals than some people that they are even in Israel and Palestine, which is a pity for me, no? Secondly, after all this pressure, I think that there are two very important factors that they have to happen in Israel and Palestine to get to one of these solutions. To me, we can discuss about which solution is better or worse. I think that two-state solution right now it's impossible because of the settlements. I think that the confederation of the two states is a really good one, but I'm from Spain. I don't care about which solution is going to happen. What I want is that a solution happen, and that this solution can be good for Israelis and Palestinians. I only discuss it in analytic terms, not of political terms. To me, the most important thing is that there will be a solution. But that for this one of these solutions happen, they need several things that have to happen in Israel and Palestine. First, we are not even talking about Palestinian Authority. They need to recover the legitimacy that they don't have right now. I think that they have to be the people who lead the Palestinian state, a state that the steps that has to be done to have this state is not recognizing right now the Palestinian state is working for Palestinians, so we have the conditions that Palestinian can be a state, because to me it's not I think that all of us we can agree that Palestine has been recognized as a state. Now, it didn't change the reality. We need to create the conditions that Palestine can be a state. But for this, I think that the Palestinian the Palestinian Authority has to recover their legitimacy. They need to, they have some cases of sometimes of corruption of all leaders. They need to work on these things. And secondly, although, and I know that this is very difficult, even with all the violence, with all the pressure that they have because of the Israeli government, I think they need to be fully clear in condemning all the violence against the Israelis and be totally pro-peace and against the violence. This is very important. Why? Because if we check the studies in Israel, for example, now, as you mentioned, the Israeli society is getting even more to the right and more religious. And why the young people, the young population votes more to the right than the other ones? They don't have memory of the peace process. We need to think also about why they are more like religious, like these people, because also the ultra-Orthodox that in the past they were like these kingmakers. They were also with the left sometimes in the government. Now they are kind of battling for the supporters with the religious Zionists. So they have, and also Netanyahu has been, doing things that they are good for them. But in Israel, we know this studies that when a terrorist attack happens, this creates that people moves more to the right. So if they receive this message from the Palestinian Authority, even more clear, it's going to be also much better. And also, it can move the society to support other political parties that are more keen to this negotiation. I know that now the situation is very difficult. I also read the surveys of Haaretz, and it's quite dramatic, but this, I think, is one of this process. I think that in Palestine, there's one figure that is very important, that is Marwan Barghouti, that now is in jail in Israel. I think that Marwan Barghouti can be like sometimes people say, like the Mandela for Palestine. And I think that this guy can join all the Palestinian forces and movements to kind of be elected in forthcoming elections when, we are talking about the future when this war stop. And in Israel, I think that two very important things. First, it's very important that this in the forthcoming elections, if this happen, with all this pressure and with all these movements that can happen from Palestine, that another government can be chosen, and this government, in order to that these conditions for the peace process will be that this could happen, they need to fully stop the settlements, to fully stop building new settlements, like as our Palestinian colleagues said before, that yesterday they approved another 22 settlements, and they need to be clear with this thing, because we also know the studies that when the Palestinians, when they receive also more settlements, or when the army commits some crimes to the Palestinian population, it also this moves to the Palestinian people to support terrorist groups like Hamas. And I think that the last thing I'm going to say, we need to take a lot of care about the media, not only in Israel but also in Palestine. We need to understand from Europe, if we have the chance, all of us reading some Israelis or Palestinians newspapers, for example, that how some media talks about the war, the conflict, is even create more radicals, no? And just one example, for example, in Palestine, if you have the chance to read all the studies, the poll surveys of Khalid Sikaki, the Palestinian Center for Survey and Policy Research, if you read the first service after October the 7th, you can check that, for example, that only, I would say that it was around 10% of the Palestinian population was conscious about the crimes, the terrorist attacks that Hamas committed on October the 7th. and they didn't know all the things that other people know. So I think this is another thing that we can do. And last of all, for finally, thank you for this initiative. To me, it's a great pleasure to hear different people with different views, for sure, but you know, for the same and with a unique aim to get peace and to work for avoiding that any more people died in this long conflict. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. It's very, yeah, it's very inspirational. As I've said, I think again and again, and I'll probably say this every time. Just even the presence of people being here, that it shows that we aren't alone in this fight for peace, for justice, for security, whatever you may call it. And there's a community behind it, and we all will have different perspectives, but it's so important that we can come together and talk. So thank you very much for that once again. We'll now move on to our final solution from Rebecca before we'll get into the discussion as such. Thank you very much, Rebecca. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Rebecca Sealfan. I am representing the organization Unity of Strength and also the Peace Proposal, Comprehensive Proposal for Reconciliation, CPRPI, which is a plan that we are co-developing with some other people with our organization, supporting it and putting resources behind it. So CPRPI is a new plan that we created partly to combine the best aspects of all the major outlines of peace. As you will see when I roll this out, 2-state, 1-state, confederation, federation. Now the 2-state solution, it's not really dead. It's still the outline of peace that the international community more or less agrees on. And it's still the outline of what most countries diplomatically recognize. Most countries, well, the greater part of the world's countries diplomatically recognize Israel in the 67 borders and Palestine beyond them. Now, both Israelis and Palestinians have taken a number of steps toward such a 2-state solution, like Arafat actually signing the Oslo Accords and Arafat and Abbas agreeing to the Arab Peace Initiative. And the Israeli public has voted in both Rabin and Olmert, as well as Ehud Barak, people who really have been proponents advocating for a 2-state solution. So multiple prime ministers. This was never finalized, but a number of steps were taken toward it that the international community did pick up on. Now, another type of plan that is generally not as well known, but Dora Bender, among other people, have done a lot of great work in promoting, is federation. Federation is a collection of regional governments under a larger central government, and federation balances local autonomy with centralization of power. A number of the world's countries have a federal system. That's the map that is shown in green. And federal plans, we are part of Federal Forum, which is a group that Dora Bender is one of the people who maintains, along with a number of other plans. Ours is a little bit different, as we're going to explain. I see some other people who are involved, like Tassada, who is part of the Federation Movement plan with Emmanuel Shahaf. He's been involved with that one. So we have our own website, cprpi.org, and it looks like that. Now, what is our plan? Our plan begins with the 2-state solution, and it begins with 2-state solution because this is the starting point. And there would be a limited government above these 2 states. the two-state solution would be based on the Omar Abbas plan, which is based on the 1967 borders, which with some land swaps and such. And the central government would focus on resource management, which is important because this really is shared and it needs to be shared equitably. And also education, and that's really important too, because education is what messages the next generation grows up with. And the two-state solution would mean end of the military occupation of the West Bank, reconstruction of Gaza, and then the two-state solution would eventually become a federation with a process in which that happens, so the two-state solution builds on the work that the main line of negotiators have been doing for a very long time. And regional peacekeepers will help put it in place, will help Palestine be able to grow without Israel and Palestine disturbing each other, disturbing the peace, and Palestine to get new leadership. For the time being, Palestinians could return to Palestine, the state of Palestine. Eventually, there would be a more extensive return, and a limited federation would be the start of the shared governance. And with shared governance, but Israeli and Palestinian culture, there's still a lot of separatism, and there's still a very strong identity maintaining that separatism, different languages, different ways of life. There is still relatively little mixing, and the phase plan would change that. Now, a federation over the longer term would, on the Palestinian side, it would enable the Palestinians to have greater control of their own security than a demilitarized Palestinian state beyond the 67 borders. And the intertwined economy would also bring benefits for Palestinians. In addition, the classic two-state solution tends to be a non-starter because Palestinians, their identity is tied up with the specific areas that their ancestors came from, not just generically to the country. So for a lot of these Palestinians, for example, returning to, say, Nablus when they're from Jaffa is not really so different than returning to Jordan, because that's not really where they consider themselves as being from. And on the Israeli side, Israelis would still have their own security, but not as many concerns as a militarized two-state solution, because the Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, but also the right to stop after the line of defense is crossed. And also the way that Israeli settlements have been make a two-state solution over the long term difficult. It's really fragmented. The pattern of settlements on the West Bank. And so you don't need to relocate as many of the settlers if the two-state solution is only temporary. Another thing is the borders. The borders are contiguous, and Palestine is not fragmented in the same way the way it would be in a two-state solution, and Israel is not pinched and narrow in its narrowest part the way it would also be in a two-state solution, and Jerusalem as well would belong to everyone. And there's really no way to separate them despite the high level of current separation for many reasons, including their attachment to the land and the need to share the resources that can't be partitioned. So, presumably, when this federation is put into place, the shared society will have grown to maturity. in the interim time. And so there would be a referendum every few years to put the federation in place. The idea being that the federation will eventually get set up and would be very, very, very hard to dissolve. The United States, by the way, is an example of a federation where that was also very hard to dissolve. We fought a whole war about some states leaving, and nope, once you're in, you're in. And when the federation kicks in, the federal body would be much more expanded, and there would be a full-fledged central government, but still regional autonomy. And there would be a fixed period for putting in and tweaking the specifics. Now, there are many areas that Palestinians and Israelis agree on that this is designed to capitalize on. First of all, they share their ties to the land. If the premise is we all are tied to the land, we're all very rooted in the land, this is a very strong premise. They also want security and freedom and equality and the full rights. In practice, you really can't liberate Palestine without Israelis having security, and you can't give Israeli security without Palestinians being liberated. But it's really time. This is now a crisis in Gaza. It is an absolute crisis. It is not quite a crisis in the West Bank, but the longer you wait, the harder it gets. And so we need to end this conflict once and for all. And it's important for the diaspora to step in and advocate on behalf of both Israel and Palestine and unite with people on both sides and people all over the world who to kick out the spoilers so that they can't have their effects. And but this is a peace plan that has been truly developed by members from both cultural groups and beyond. There are a significant number of both Israelis and Palestinians involved with this plan. A partial list of the people involved with this plan is over here. There are also some other people like Walid Siam, Janine Sop, but these are the people who put their names on this slide. We have our main website, cprpi.org, if you want to go to it. And there are several different discussion groups on WhatsApp that are working on continuing to develop and promote the plan, especially the specific CPRPI discussions. And there's a larger discussion group that has more extensive discussions about more topics that led to this plan in the first place. So I want to say thank you. I'm going to put the relevant links in the Zoom chat. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Rebecca. It's really interesting to see how there's so many different solutions to one conflict, right? But the thing that unites us all is just that we need a solution. And that's just like unity is strength, we're also united by that common theme that we're all here. Your very attendance here shows that you're willing to have hope and you're willing to believe in a better, in a more peaceful future. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to our panel now. We'll have this going till about 12:15 to 12:20, which is slightly shorter than initially expected. But then after that, I will finish the recording and there will be time for any informal discussions. So for our three panelists, which is Dora Bender, Dr. Dan Tennant-Ralphs, and Rameir Musmar, I've got my first question for you, and if any of the audience has questions, feel free to put it into the chat. The first question is, what is one specific actionable policy that you believe could realistically move us close towards peace in the next 12 to 24 months? It can be obviously small or big. So I'll start with you, Dora. What do you think's one actionable policy that we could make to advance peace?
I think openness, it's not exactly a policy, but I think when we're talking about in terms of normalization, the big gap that both sides do not see it in a positive way to actually to speak with each other. So I think like open like a dialogue and understanding, like Mo said it. And like we have to discuss between us. And also, if I would say a policy, I would suggest including in negotiation also people from civil society, because the people on the ground are the ones that actually see the true reality.
Awesome. Dan, what do you think of that? What's one actionable solution you think we can, or actionable policy we can implement?
I think one for me, and I was reading about this the other day, and I don't think I could find a single example in history where two female leaders have started a war. I think maybe there was a wife of a king at some point, but and some people have varying views on these sort of policies, but I think having it ingrained into the process that there have to be women front and center, because I'm a man, and I admit that we're not doing a lot we're not bringing a lot of good to the situation. I think that would be an actionable policy for me. Make women have a seat at the table.
Yeah, perfect. I don't think I've heard an example of that either, if I'm honest. Anyway, Ramer, do you have a comment on this? What do you think is one policy we can implement?
Good evening or good morning to everyone. I think since this conflict started, no one asked the Palestinians what they want. To be honest, never that happened before. But I think the first step, it should be like an initiative to make people to recognize themselves as a Palestinian or as Israelis or the Arab or not. So when Oslo Accords started in the ground, many people, they still have the identity, the orange identity for the Palestinian, which could located in the West Bank or in Gaza. For a long time, I still remember my father since 2002, we still have the orange ID that make himself as not a citizen, like he's located in that area. But when the second intifada started and people start asking what will go into us, by the way, this era looks like the same time in that time in 2002, which is we lost our leaders, we lost our vision, we lost every tool we could have, like Arab League or others, like what's going to Gaza right now. So I think first of all, we should stop this killing party in Gaza. Then we should going to election in both sides, in Palestine or in Israel. The third thing, it could be like a popular negotiation to bring like a popular recognition for both people. Then they should start for a long term of negotiation, which is located in the ground, like who lives in Selfie, who should negotiate people in Israel. The same thing it should happen with people from Tulkarem and Netanya. And that's going on until we have a real leadership in Palestine or in Israel. And the both side, both of them, they are looked like when Netanyahu said no Hamas or Abbas, I think the same thing should happen in Israel. No Netanyahu or Smotrich, not kind of people corrupted or have criminal minds. We should represent by good people, by people who want peace, people want to a real agreement. We are in a war, unfortunately, but they used to end any kind of war with agreements. So we have the time to agreements. If we have some courage or some people give us the push, the real push, to make a real negotiation that end this war and end this conflict together in that time. And I think it's so soon. So let's pick this choice, this opportunity to make something in the ground, not waiting for Trump for any kind of promise, or like the Israelis have the promise for this land, or even the Muslims that had the promise to win this war, by the way. Yani. So let's work in the ground, not make action just only in the air or waiting for the European Union or American to decide what we can do. We can do a lot. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, we do have some people who have raised their hands. So firstly, Nimat, you raised your hand. What would you like to say?
Yes, Inuka, thank you very much. I'm Nimat Shamma, board member for the Democracy and Federalism Hub. I just want to answer your question actually about what is the first step. From my point of view, I see that we have two actions. They are complementary, actually. We can't separate them. First of all, we need to take the opinion of the people, what they want, confederation, two-state solution, one-state solution. They should decide that from both sides, for example, Israeli and Palestinian, to solve this conflict. Number two, which is also important, to know the way, how can we reach out for the men in power that they can have an action on the ground. If we convince them and we reach them and to talk with them, and then we can have some change on the ground. Without that, everything we are doing it's like going to there like this. So when we get to the men in power, they can have the effect on presidents, on changing the situation. We can have a very big change on the political situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Rebecca, you had a question or comment as well. Go ahead.
I'm going to answer your original question. So, which I think is very good how you have this facilitation. So, what I'm going to say is that war and peace, they are not binary states. They are on a sliding scale. By definition, one thing that would immediately lead to a much higher degree of peace is if you're an Israeli prime minister, have a ceasefire that you really mean to keep and that really involves a genuine reconstruction of Gaza. If you are a foreign leader, pressure Israel to make that happen. By definition, that would lead to a higher degree of peace, just to not have this going on in Gaza. It would be the level of peace that there was before October 7th. And that's what I wanted to say. There is a big elephant in the room here, and it wouldn't be complete peace, but it would be a much higher level of peace.
Thank you for that. Do any of the panelists have any comments on any of those two additions?
Yeah, I would like to comment about what Dan said regarding women. Like about a year and a half ago, I established Forum 1325 for Political Solutions, and that's a woman forum. So we are pushing, and we have Ramez here that we also, that we're also trying to build a similar project on the Palestinian side, and we see it as something really profound, finding that women engage. And I was hoping that more women will come today, but sometimes it's very challenging. And so I want to thank you for this comment. I think it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have any things to add on, or do you want to move on to the next question? No, that's fine. All right. So the next question is on what do you think the role of global powers should be? Do you think specifically when you're talking about the United States, but more widely, in whatever corner of the world you're in, what do you think your government or governments in general can do or should do in the conflict? Should it be more hands-on or more hands-off? Over to you.
I know Jerome voted. I'm sorry, do you want to speak, Jerome?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, there.
No, please, Dora. I'll speak after. It's
Yeah,
fine.
no
worries.
worries. Awesome.
Yeah, I think the international community is having a key role to play, but understanding that in the end, whoever going to sit is the Israeli government with the Palestinian government. So I think we should all like think about it, like what's the practical, because so much money is being spent. And we have a conference now in Paris and then in New York. And civil society organization here on the ground are starving, the one who actually doing all the work. So we need to balance out and also listen to our governments. The PLO have valid things, and also the Israeli government have valid things. And instead of trying to just push for one direction, instead of deciding for our government and for our people, try to bring us together. Try to see how we can sit together. What condition will bring us together? If it's economic, maybe that we think that economic could be something profound for both government to actually discuss. Because we know climate change is changing. We have problem with the ecosystem. We have many things that we can start maybe in small steps to connect between us, and then through that cooperation, we can build trust. Like for example, we have major fires going on, and the PLO did offer to support. And I know from 2 years ago, the PLO before October 7, we had another major fire breakout, and actually the PLO did help putting the fire down. So I feel like these things bring people together. So thank you. Yeah.
Perfect. Dan, I'll go ahead, Si. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. Look, I just wanted to jump in quickly, specifically with regards to this kind of what should external people be doing, what should the US be doing, et cetera, et cetera. I think it is long past time to pretend that recognition of the Palestinian state is a reward. That the recognition of the Palestinian right to a state is a reward, right? Like we are constantly put into this math of saying like, we will only recognize you if, right? Like, and yet the fundamental assumption is that just as a function of the existence of a Jewish nation, they have a right to a state, right? And what I'm trying to get at is that when you make a Palestinian state the carrot, you are already kind of creating an unequal balance. The Palestinian state needs to be a baseline thing. Look, there will be a Palestinian state. Get over it, right? Like the question in front of both sides of here, the question in front of both sides is what does that look like in the context of existing next to an Israeli state, whether that is the canton federalization, federal approach, whether that's a confederation, like whatever it may be. But if we say in any way, shape, or form that the Jewish people have a quote unquote right to a Palestinian state, then to me, we must say with the same level of commitment that the Palestinian people have a right to a state. And I think what drives me crazy about this conflict, about this conversation over and over and over again is the absolute lack of consistency that I see from international mediators. You cannot say that it's okay to commit war crimes on one side, but it's not okay to commit war crimes on the other side. War crimes are war crimes. Anybody engaging in war crimes is engaging in war crimes. When you say that a people has a right to legitimacy, when you say that a people has a right to self-determination, if we say that that is true, then everybody has a right to legitimacy and to self-determination. And I think once again, like what frustrates me and a lot of Palestinians is the fundamental imbalance in the conversation when you go and you engage in dialogue about the situation on the ground. I will tell you, for example, as a Palestinian, it's deeply offensive, right? Like continually to be asked to quote unquote, do you denounce Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? Like it's the first question, almost like a qualifier. And yet I've been watching social media lately, and for the first time in their history, Israelis are now being asked to like, do you condemn the genocide? Do you condemn, Netanyahu? And they're jumping up, right? Like I'm watching Jews in the United States here jump up and say like it's deeply anti-Semitic to ask me this, as a qualifier, and which I agree with, like it is, right? But understand that this has been something that has continually been done to Palestinians over and over again. And so I think like the one thing that I would love to get across is like, I want people to be ethical and moral and empathetic, but I want them to do that regardless of whom they're talking to. If you have ethics and you have morality, then that morality applies equally to Palestinians as it does to Israelis, right? And we are never going to move forward. You will never be a trusted and balanced mediator to Palestinians or Israelis until you can do that, until you can speak with one voice that doesn't change the prescription based on whether a dead person is Israeli or a dead person is Palestinian. And sorry, I will shut up now. I'm ranting.
Thank you. Thank you for that. What do the other panelists have to say both about Mo's comment and about the question more widely? And then we'll get to people with raised hands after that.
It's interesting because this has given me a lot of food for thought, because on the one hand it's like, what right do I, living in Spain as a Brit, or the Spanish government have to tell Israelis and Palestinians how to solve this highly complex and delicate issue when there's enough internal problems going on here? Practical examples in my case would be giving more voices to the likes of Rami and Bassam from the Parents Family Forum, Robbie Damlin, Suli from Combatants for Peace, giving those kind of people protagonism here in Spain, like funding for them to go and tour around Spain, talking to people on all ends of the political spectrum to try and limit these chasms. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be balanced here, but at the moment we have a left-wing government, and I think, and so the national government is left-wing, the regional Madrid government is right-wing, and the leader of Madrid, she hates Pedro Sanchez, who's left-wing, and I think the Palestinian-Israeli conflict gets used almost as a sort of toy to try and win brownie points in politics, and that's not healthy. And so yeah, and I meant to talk about it earlier, but is it a reality for it to happen today? Maybe not. But I know in Paris in November 2023, they actually organized a genuine pro-peace march, which brought Jews, Muslims, Israelis, Arabs together. I think those kind of initiatives in Europe are the kind of message we should be sending from a place of humility, not from a place of, oh, we know better, you should do this, and doing all the finger pointing.
Perfect. What do you, Lamer, think of that? What role should international actors play?
I think we will, if we will stay to US to make any action. We see what happened to the Arab Gulf. They went to bring some money from there. So I think we have a lot of things about the international law and the international court and all this association trying to manage this conflict, not to end this conflict. But if you want to end this conflict, you should start from something alternative, like Oslo coming to end this conflict by international conditions, regional conditions, like what happened to the Soviet Union. They get down, and Iraq go back a lot of feet. So they decide to, yeah, let's go to Oslo. We should take something to take more later. But nowadays, there's no Union Soviet. There's no Arab Union, at least at all. So we have people in the streets. We have young people in the leadership in Europe, in America. And that's what we have to do. We have to make connection, starting from us, the both sides, to connect strongly with these people in the ground, in the campus in America or in Europe, the traders, the politicians, the right one, not that we want to jump. No, that who looking for justice, not for a place in the parliament or something else. These people, if they work hardly, we can finish this thing in just only 3 years. I still remember what happened in the South Lebanon in 1999 and 2000, when just only 4 women from Israel make a demonstration, and they work in the street, and they bring people, mothers, sisters, who want their young people came back from Lebanon to end this war in Lebanon in 2000. So if we have real men, if we have a free men, free women everywhere, from West Bank, Gaza, and Israel, from Jordan, Egypt, man, 7 countries have a connection with Israel. They want to visit Abbas in Ramallah tomorrow. Israel rejected that visit. So it's not about countries, not about political regime. It's about people. People can move, people can change. People doesn't move, no one can make any change. And that's it. Do not stay to or wait for the UN to make something. No, they like what they do. They just send ads, they create and reporting, then they celebrate, they bring some food for some people in Sudan or Yemen or in West Bank or Gaza. No, we have to move, not wait for anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you for that. First, move on to Rebecca. You raised your hand. You're muted at the moment.
Well, I think that the peoples in the region, they have been incited by outside actors. This is not a region in a vacuum. This already is a region where the people are serving as proxy warriors for the battle between the West and the Islamic world. We are not your gladiators. We are not here to fight each other for your personal amusement and validation. But just as outside forces can be the saboteurs in the room, they can also be the good faith actors in the room. It could work both ways, and we have reached the point where this region does need international pressure. Palestinians and Israelis need international pressure not to radicalize and to come toward a solution along the lines of the 2-state solution or a 1-state solution like federation. And the longer this waits, the worse it can get.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll finally move on to David, who wanted to answer the question, and then after that, I'm going to give my formal concluding speech because I'm well aware it's past time now. And then after that, if anybody wants to continue talking, we can do that off recording. So, David, it's up to you now.
Yeah, well, about the international community, I entirely agree with I think Ramek said. I think the international community don't really care about, sadly, about this conflict. And they want, as he said, to manage the conflict in their own interests. Let's go back to October the 6th, 2023. Who or where, in which media was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Just a couple of weeks before October the 7th, we were celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Oslo Accords, of the first Oslo Agreement, and not in many places in the media we were reading about this important event. So I think that we are, although some of us were professors, researchers, activists, whatever, that we are, all of us, I think, activists for the peace because we care about this. I think that is within us, within the civil society, that we have to pressure all this international community because they are going, or also somehow being somehow clever in order to how to sell, in a pragmatic way, why peace is also good for them. Not because peace is good, because this they don't care. We see this. So I think that we don't have to, for example, like here in my country, in Spain, when they say that we recognize the Palestinian state, whatever, and the Spanish president, when he recognized the Palestinian state, the year before, he removed the recognition of the Palestinian state in his electoral program after being included in the previous election. So this is an example of how this international community works. So I think that we need to somehow being clever in selling them that this is good for them, and not trusting in their own or their good will, because they don't really care. They only care about managing the conflict.
Thank you for that. What a lovely way to end the formal part of this discussion. Thank you very much. I'll move straight on to the concluding speech, which should only take 5 minutes, and then we will finish the recording. So thank you all. All right. As we draw this session to a close, I want to return briefly to why we're really here. This session reminded me that this isn't just about politics. It's not even just about peace. It's about responsibility. Because the people who benefit from this conflict continuing, the people who benefit from this status quo, they're organized, they're funded, and they're loud. And so we have to be louder, not in volume, but in resolve. We must be willing to build, even when others tear everything down around us. We must be willing to speak, even when we're tired. To show up, even when we think it won't matter, because it does matter. This space matters, and what you choose to do after this call matters. I want to move on and say a quick word about the organization behind this gathering, the Coalition for Peace and Coexistence, which I founded recently. The CPC is not here to push any particular ideology. We exist to connect, to amplify peace builders, to host these critical discussions, and to train a new generation of regional change makers. In the months ahead, the CPC will grow. We will host further events like this. We will build on our platform for peace education, and we will launch our first cohort of emerging peace builders from the region. If today inspired you, I wish for you to join us, not for advocacy, but for communication. On final reflection, this work, as I'm sure we can all agree, is exhausting. But if this program has shown anything, it's shown that it is not hopeless. Because for all the power violence holds, it has one weakness. It cannot survive in places like this, where people still choose dialogue over discussion. So I wish for you all to keep choosing it, keep writing, keep questioning, keep listening, keep reaching, and above all, keep building. So thank you all for being here, for believing in a better future, and for reminding us that peace is not only a dream, it's a decision. So together, let us keep making it. And thank you all so much for being here. Good night.